exciting to be chairing, so thanks for your patience and understanding. But let's go ahead and get started. Let's officially welcome our new members. So I haven't looked to see if they're on the call. Hopefully they've joined
I
us, but
think
we
they're
have,
here, yes.
perfect. We have Carrie Main joining us from USHE, and she'll be helping represent higher education. And then we also have Tim Lovell representing Intermountain and the hospital
Oh,
systems.
I guess Tim isn't on. I apologize. I thought I saw Tim. He is scheduled to be coming, right, Sarah?
Well, maybe Carrie, if you want to take a moment and introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carrie Main, and as Christina said, I'm representing the Utah System of Higher Education. I'm the chief economist at the office. I work with all things data and research, and so we tend to kind of secondarily represent all things having to do with technology and IT in the USHE office. So I had an interest in when our representative, Jared Haynes, retired. I was interested in taking part of this, and the commissioner agreed. And so I'm very happy to be involved, and I look forward to all the work with Christina, Spencer, and the rest of the group.
Well, welcome. We're glad to officially welcome you. Glad to have you here. Tim Lovell, has he get a chance to join us? Do you see Spencer?
No, it doesn't look like he's joined us yet.
Okay, all right. Well, Tim's joining us from Intermountain Health, and again, he'll represent urban hospitals for us. So, welcome. Let's get a quick, just a reminder, I guess, of the subcommittees that we have. So we have the Finance Subcommittee that is chaired by Kurt Lovelace and has Carrie Main and myself as members. And then we also have a Policy Committee that is chaired by Rich Nye and has Jason Straight, our vice chair, and Eric Hawley as members, as well as a Tech Advisory. It has Greg Schreiner, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, as the chair for that committee. So let's see here. Moving along with our agenda, we have a guest speaker joining us. So the board will hear from Dr. Jennifer Lynn Robinson. She is the chief of staff for the Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute for University of Utah. And you'll see some materials that should be in the agenda there for her presentation. And this will help support the board's community representation statement and policy. She will discuss the Institute's research and planning projections for Utah from 2024 through 2033. So I'll turn time to Dr. Robinson now.
Christina, thanks for the introduction. I don't think I've ever had anyone use my full name in an introduction. It feels like when your mom or your dad is yelling at you.
Well, you're not in trouble. So.
Before a lot of people joined the call, Jennifer Covington and I were talking about if you were born in the 70s, the chances of your name being Jennifer, middle names were, and I told her Lynn, and I thought maybe you were picking up on that joking.
I'll just say the staff is very thorough. It helps prepare the agenda for me, so thank you.
Yeah, that's great. It's really nice to be with everyone today. I serve as the chief of staff here at the Kem C. Gardner Policy Institute, which is part of the University of Utah. We sit in the David Eccles School of Business, and we're getting ready to celebrate our 10th anniversary as an institute. Our goal is to provide great data and analysis to decision makers across the state. And that's all the way from the capital to rural communities, cities, counties, towns, school districts, as well as business leaders and nonprofit leaders, so that they have the best data around Utah's economy and our changing demographics to make great decisions for the state. And I've been asked to share some information with you all today about where our state is. And so I'm going to do a few things. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've called the new Utah here at the Gardner Institute and some of the trends, the changes that we have seen in our state's demographics. And then I want to share with you some of the short-term projections, the things that we are seeing and expecting over the next 10 years. How does that sound to everybody? And I welcome.
Sounds great. I'll mention there's a few folks I can hear a little bit of background noise. If you don't mind muting, that'd be fantastic, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Christina. The new Utah is a term that we coined about a year ago. And it's because we've seen some pretty significant changes in our population and in our state's economy since about 2000. And I'm going to cover a number of those with you all today. The first is I want you to understand how our state has grown. We've become what we're describing as a mid-sized state. So we've gone from a small state, and within 20 to 30 years, we're now a mid-sized state. Our growth has really changed since the COVID period. We tended to grow by new births. and less from in-migrants. And that has done a complete reversal. So I'm going to share some data around that we've seen. We are becoming a much more multicultural, more diverse state in terms of race and ethnicity. And we anticipate that to continue to change. It's a national trend and we're following that. What would be interesting, I think, to school districts is how our youth is changing. We were much younger population, getting to be a much older population, and expect that to change. I'll spend a minute telling you a little bit about how our state has always, well, for several decades, been a strong economy. We're calling it now an elite economy. And I'll share a few things related to post-COVID and some of the incredible data points around that. Of course, everybody is concerned about this issue, and that's housing. And I'll share some data around housing, our concerns with that, and why we think it's an economic risk. And then we'll wrap up talking about our projections over the next 10 years. This is really interesting, but in the last decade, so think of 2010 to 2020, those are the census years that we track, Utah leapfrogged 4 states, Arkansas, Mississippi, Nebraska, and Iowa, to become a mid-sized state. And now we rank 30th in population size. You can see here our amazing growth over that 10-year period in terms of population. So grew at over 18%. 18% growth in 10 years. And you can compare that to some of our neighbors in the Intermountain region that have had high growth rates as well as in Texas. And now you can see how we've changed. So bottom third in terms of population size in 1980, mid 30s for about 20 years, and now ranked 30th in the country. Right now, these states that are in the gray are states that have populations that are smaller than the state of Utah. So a lot of our neighboring states here in the Intermountain region. Let me show you also, we do population projections for the state. We're actually in state code to provide those population projections that are supposed to be used at school districts, cities, counties, and by state agencies. And our last population projections, we projected out to 2060. And we do a low number, a baseline number, and a high number, but just kind of pay attention to this baseline number. We're anticipating our population hitting 5.5 million people by 2060. And you can see that trajectory that's going along there. I can tell you a little bit more about that in a few minutes about where we expect some of that population growth to occur. I mentioned how we used to grow, and anybody from Utah that grew up like I did in the 70s and 80s, so much of our growth came from lots of babies, high fertility rates, and lots of babies and families. And what's happened is we've seen a real complete reversal of that trend in the last few years. So just pay attention here. From 2000 to 2020, about 34% of our population growth came from net migration. So that's more people moving in the state than moving out of the state. And 66% of our population growth came from new babies. And it's completely different since COVID. So we're seeing about 60% of our growth in the last couple of years has come from net migration. Lots of new people moving into our state. And the babies, about 41% is our natural increase. So more babies being born than people passing away in our state. I want to show you that trend over time. So this goes all the way back to 1950. And this is net migration, or so new people moving in, or population loss from migration. And we hit a high number in 2022 of 38,000 people moving into our state. I get the question a lot, where are people coming from? And I don't know, when I ask this, people quickly say California. I don't know if anybody had that as the top of mind for you as well. And no question about it. So this is just 5-year estimates from the Census Bureau ACS numbers, but it's pre-COVID. But you're absolutely right. You know, about 17% of our in-migrants were coming from California. about 7% from Texas. The next big one was from Idaho, about 7%. It's a little different since COVID. So I'm going to show you the most recent numbers that my team got me this morning from 2021. So about 19% from California that year, a little lower from Texas, but this kind of region, more migrants from Arizona, and still about the same amount of people from Idaho coming into the state. So that's where people are moving from into the state. You guys would also be really interested in hearing this. I love this number, but this is where people were born when they come to our state. So what I'm showing here is over a quarter of people that are migrating to Utah were actually born here. So think of it as they're coming home. And I find that number so fascinating. I want to show you a little bit about fertility rates too. So we talked about all of those babies that were being born when I was growing up in the state. Our fertility rate here in Utah is in the red. So in 1960, it's 4.3 babies per woman of childbearing age. And we have seen a significant decline. We're actually below replacement level in the state. So we're at 1.85 babies in the state per woman who's childbearing age. It's following the national trend. We're just always above it. You'll be really interested. We talk at our office about what happened during the Great Recession, that we hit this low point in fertility rates. We thought that this would just be kind of a dip. And we actually thought when we were, coming out of the recession that it would bounce back up. Instead, it's just followed this national trend of a declining fertility rate. Let's see. And this is the fertility rates by state. Most people would expect that Utah would have the highest fertility rate. And typically that's been the case historically, but it's not the case in the last several years at least, where we have South Dakota and Nebraska and Alaska have higher fertility rates than we do right now. And it bounces around between the Dakotas and Nebraska, us and Alaska for a few years with the highest rates. I want to tell you a little bit about how our state's changed in terms of diversity too. Nearly a quarter of our population self-identifies as a racial or ethnic minority. We've talked at the Institute that we're more diverse than some of these other states that might surprise you. You might think of Missouri or Ohio as being more diverse, but not quite the case anymore. And you can see how that's changed from 1990 when I was in high school to today, about a quarter of our population. And we anticipate that number to continue to grow following the US trend. Our population is also getting much older. Let me show you a quick graphic on this. So this is the population retirement age over 65, over 12% today. By the end of the decade, closer to 15% of our population will be over age 65. And by 2050, about a fifth of our population will be that over 65 age. I mentioned some of the incredible things that happened during the COVID period. My gosh, some of the things that we've talked about at the Institute is that we felt like the state always had this strong economy, 2000, 2010. Since 2010, we feel like it's pretty consistently outperformed other states. And during the COVID pandemic, there's no question about that. I'll just quickly go through this. This is job growth by state, and it is the messiest figure you will ever see. All of those little gray lines represent one of the 50 states. The red line represents Utah, and the black line is the US average. And these gray bars that are vertical here, these are the recession markers. So the dot-com recession, the Great Recession, there's this little COVID recession that happened here. And we just highlight a number of interesting facts, but how incredible the state did coming out of the pandemic, ranking 4th in job growth by 2021, and pretty consistently doing better than the other states over this last decade. This is job growth coming out of the COVID period. So we're counting from February, just before COVID, the pandemic hit us in March, through June 2023. It's kind of a fun figure to look at, multiple years. So third highest job growth across the nation, beaten by Montana and Idaho. And then this is job growth. This is just year over. I just pulled it this morning for you guys so you could see job growth year over from October 23-24 and 1.9% job growth in the state. And you might be interested in the industries where we're seeing job growth. So this is actually October data. So total job growth here, really high job growth in construction and in education, and government is seeing that as well right now. And then the unemployment number for October is interesting too. So low unemployment numbers. Let's see, housing is also something we track. The Institute has an entire team dedicated to studying Utah's housing, construction, and real estate market. And you guys will be really interested. My latest is this morning. We're actually 7 states have higher home prices than the state of Utah right now. So let me pull up a few things that will be interesting to you. Again, Utah's in the red line. We have to do that because we're the University of Utah. So whenever you see things out of the Gardner Institute, just track that Utah's in red. This is showing how we're becoming a much more expensive housing market. It's not surprising to anybody that's tried to buy in the market in the last few years, but what you're seeing is that happened somewhere around 2016, 2017, where we started to spread out from the national numbers. That's the latest change in the housing price index, which is kind of interesting. But this is what I want to show you. So the median sales price for single family homes, and this is as Q1 2024, we had 7 states that had more expensive median home prices than the state of Utah. And it really doesn't surprise you, Hawaii, expensive, California, DC, Massachusetts, state of Washington, Colorado, and New York. And then Utah comes in as 8. It's really a concern to the Institute, and I know a lot of people are paying attention to that, but I thought you'd just find it interesting to have a few facts and little data points that you could share. I also wanted to spend a few minutes with you guys telling you about our short-term projections. So the Gardner Institute does two types of projections here at our office. We study short-term, which is like a 10-year time window, and we study long-term, going out to closer to 40, 50, 60 years. And our latest projections came out this year. What we're anticipating is this growth of about 500,000 people between now and 2033. So going from, our population is about 3.5 million people right now, hitting 4 million people within a decade. And I mentioned how we've been growing. We've had this reversal since COVID where we've been growing much more by net migration. We think that will change a little bit and we'll be closer to about half and half. Half of our population growth from net migration, half of our population growth from natural increases. So you guys will probably be interested in seeing what we anticipate in terms of the population growth. This, again, the projections for the next 10 years and where we expect population growth to happen. Salt Lake County, excuse me, about 124,000 people. Utah County with more people than Salt Lake County, 164,000 people. Washington County down here with about 62,000 and change in that area. Couple counties we think could have population loss, that we're projecting population loss: Daggett, Duchesne, and Millard. So really, really interesting. It helps with planning at all sorts of different levels. This is the components of change that I mentioned, that we think it's closer to equal in net migration, natural increases to our population. And then I wanted to show you what we think our age groups are going to look like. Helpful for school district planning, for higher ed planning as well. Over here on the left, we're looking at the population by age group for our current year, 2024. So this red is our little ones from 0 to 4. These are our K through 12, 5-year-olds through 17-year-olds. These are 18-year-olds to 24-year-olds. This is 25 to 65, our working age, really population. 65 to 84, and then those over 85. And then you can just compare that with what we are projecting for the year 2033. So smaller K through 12 population is what we're anticipating statewide. And I think our team has some numbers at the county level. So if anybody's interested in that, reach out and we can put you in touch with the demographic team that can share this. And I also think that Christine, I think the team from UEN is going to share a couple of documents with the group. So we're going to share the short-term projections so you have the full report as a PDF, and we're also sharing the new Utah report. And I'm happy to take the slides with that too. And then,
Thank you.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to show you is what we think will happen for employment by industry in the state over that 10-year period. So where the growth, big job growth will happen, and less growth or job losses is what we would expect in some of the other industries. So that's really helpful. I'm so glad to take any questions people have too, Christine, if that's helpful to the group.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Let's open up for any questions. Trying to see if there's any in the chat or anything either.
It's a lot of information.
It is a lot. You know, I have the chance sometimes to get presentations there at UVU from the KMC Gardner Institute. And every time I'm always taking notes, and it's always interesting conversation around the dinner table to share insights and things of what I've learned. So just thank you. It's fascinating.
You're sure welcome.
It's super interesting information. The next logical question, which I don't expect a comprehensive answer to, is now what do we get to do with it?
Yeah, that's all your choice, right? The role of the Gardner Institute, and we say it really clearly, we're kind of like denominator people. You know, we want to give you all the best data and information so that you can use that to make a wise decision going forward. We actually have the fun tagline here at the Institute. You might have seen it, but it's informed decisions. And that is incredibly important to us. That's our motto. We want to make sure everybody, whether you're in the business sector or you're in the public sector, you have great data to make good decisions going forward.
I love that. We have that same mantra, right? We don't love data driven. We love, because you don't have to be driven to do it, right? You're data informed. So that's
data
fantastic.
informed. I like that.
I love that. I see a chat here, a question in the chat. Can we reach out whenever we need data? Who is the correct contact person?
Yeah. You can reach out to me, and then anybody on our website is happy to help you. But we have specific leads on our team. So I have a demography lead, that's Mallory Bateman, and Mallory does presentations all the time. She does this and others. If you had demographic questions, Mallory's your person to go to. If you have economic questions, it could be Nate Lloyd or Phil Dean. If you have any questions about public finance, how revenues are generated of public spending, that's Phil Dean on our team, who came to us from the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget several years ago.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And I see Steve has a question.
Jennifer, with these projections, there's a decline in the population, but what impact will this have on higher education? Fewer students applying to in-state at least to go to higher education institutions?
Yeah.
And is there any estimates on what impacts that will have on our K through 12 and also higher education?
Yeah, Steve, there's a really, really good report that we just put out about this dip, and there's actually two pieces. I'm going to make sure that the team has it, but there's stuff around the declining population numbers for that kind of college age population, and some thoughts about what could be done related to that. I see Carrie's on the call too. We did this report with Carrie, and she might be helpful here to answer how USHE and other institutions are using that data. But I think it's really, really helpful and important data so that people can be making these, having these conversations and making really smart decisions about what do you do when your in-state population for that college age is going to decline. Yeah, Carrie, is there anything you want to add about how that's been used at USHE?
Yeah, we're just the insights that Jennifer's team has gleaned on that demographic dip, we have taken that, and my team has developed some enrollment projections. We're still in the draft phase of those, but we've used that plus a few other economic indicators to create some projections that we'll be using for budget as well as other conversations.
Excellent.
It seems to me in relationship to other states, then if other states are declining in that population, that they may be trying to pick off our graduates, our high school graduates. At least I've heard that might be the case. And then we also hear that 30% of higher education institutions will close in the United States. And in relationship to the decline in college age students, do you have any kind of feel or figures for those kinds of comments?
I don't, not on the closures of universities or colleges across the country. I'm not familiar with that. Maybe Carrie is. But I would say this, that what's happening nationally, Utah's just a little bit behind in terms of the demographic dip. So other states are experiencing this now, and ours is a few years down the road.
And can we get this presentation? Is that possible?
Yes. Yeah. I'm happy to send the slides.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So that was one of the questions from the chat too, if the deck was shareable. It sounds like yes, we'll be getting that. Then there was also a question if there's any data related to healthcare stats for the state's population.
There is. We have a really nice piece on the diverse populations, and I will add that to my list, Christina, to send to you guys.
Excellent.
So it shows essentially disparities by racial, ethnic group, men and women, on health disparities, as well as a number of other things.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any further questions, guys?
Just again, there's quite a bit of discussion in the State Board of Higher Education about do the colleges and universities in this particular case, are they training people for jobs? And I think there, from the Speaker of the House, there's quite a bit of push to make sure that that changes so that there's more of training for jobs that are currently in Utah that people don't have the educational expertise to take. Do you have any figures on that at all?
I don't know if we do at the Institute. Carrie, are you guys tracking those kinds of things?
Yep. So I know exactly what Steve is talking about. We are taking, and we have for many years, we take the student data and we look at what they're graduating in. We look at what they're potentially employed in based on that degree and how that aligns with the projected and current jobs in the state. We additionally look at where they actually get employed, like what industries. We are working to bring that data together to inform that conversation with the legislature about, where we're potentially missing the mark in terms of developing the right graduates for the jobs of today and the future, and where we might be missing the mark and where we need to, increase the funding, and where we need to maybe be pulling back because we're overfunding in an area that's just not getting students employable in living wage occupations.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you. Jennifer, thank you so much. That was fantastic. Very insightful. And yeah, there'll be more materials posted and available for board members to review and to share. It sounds like there's nothing that's confidential from any of the materials that we've seen. So thank you so much for that presentation.
You are very welcome. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.
You too. Have a great weekend. All right, let's move along with the agenda. So the board will take action on the minutes from the previous meeting. Those should be attached there. You'll see them. That was from August 9th. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I approve.
Awesome. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, those meeting minutes have been approved. Moving along, we have, so I mentioned that this is my first time chairing. I'm stepping into big shoes to fill, and those are from Dr. Patty Norman. And so we'd like to do a resolution of gratitude for her and for her years of service. And we've asked Rich Nye to help present that resolution honoring Patty. So I'll turn time over to Rich Nye now.
Thank you so much. And I There's a lot that I could say about Patty, but I'll say this, right? In addition to the resolution that we'll adopt here shortly, however, Patty's someone who carries with her such passion and brilliance. And that is such a unique combination. And I've just been inspired, Patty, by your leadership over these many, many years. I was at the state board as a deputy superintendent, Superintendent Smith and Superintendent Dixon. Patty came on, and our capacity just grew exponentially. And then when I left, she assumed the role of deputy superintendent state board and has been there these many years. And so I truly appreciate, Patty, all that you've done. Our state, our systems are better because of you. We're excited for your retirement. I will say an additional personal privilege. If you have never had the perfect blend of Swedish fish and hot tamales, you need to visit Dr. Norman's office. She introduced me to that. And if you've not, at first you wonder, but then you enjoy, right? And so, Patty, of the many contributions, that'll always be one of my favorite. And so, with a deep sense of gratitude, Patty, I'll read this resolution honoring you and your services and contributions to UETN. Whereas Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement at the Utah State Board of Education, has dedicated 8 years of service in leading the UETN board as chair and co-chair. Whereas Dr. Norman has demonstrated an unwavering commitment to advancing UETN's vision to provide access to high-quality educational technology resources that benefit learners, educators, patients, and healthcare providers throughout the state. Whereas in her role at USBE, Dr. Norman oversees critical educational areas, including assessment and accountability, career and technical education, special education, and child nutrition programs that work to support student success in alignment with UETN's mission. Whereas she champions the thoughtful integration of technology to improve education and healthcare for all Utahns, collaborating with UETN to promote digital literacy and ensure that Utah is prepared for the future. Whereas her background as an educator and administrator has provided her with the insight to champion effective instructional practices that resonate with UETN's objective of fostering a rich, technology-supported educational environment for all students. Therefore, be it resolved that we, the members of the UETN board, do hereby extend our sincere gratitude and appreciation to Patty Norman with this certificate of appreciation dated this date, December 6, 2024. Thank you, Patty. Sure appreciate you and all that you've done, and wish you the very, very, very best in retirement.
Thank you so much. All right, so I think we approve the motion, right? So do I get a motion to approve and accept the resolution of gratitude? Awesome. And is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 All right. Patty, thank you so much. Again, I have big shoes to fill. I haven't had a chance to work with you as long as I would like to have, but I have a lot to have learned from you. So thank you.
Yeah, and I just, if you don't mind, I just wanted to say just
course.
a couple things. It's not a speech, don't worry. But this has been some of the most honorable work that I have been a part of. Just the greatness and the equity-driven work that is being done at UETN to make this accessible to everyone across the state. And it's been something that wherever I go, people bring up the work of UETN. So continue on with this great work. And this is so any of you on the edge about retiring, this is the best time to retire because I now get to play with AI to my heart's content. I don't get to just dabble with it. Like I get to like become engrossed in it. I've already told Matt Winters when he came, like I want his job. That's who I want, is just to be the AI specialist somewhere. But now I not only don't have to have his job, I get to do whatever I want with it. And I'm so excited just to play and do those things that are acts of service more in the line of community. So thank you all for helping me learn and grow and for doing this most admirable work and the work of UETN. So thanks to all of you.
Oh, you're fantastic. Well, maybe we'll have to have you come back as a guest presenter on AI applied to education and then telehealth. So wonderful. Thank you so much, Patty. All right, moving along with the agenda, we'll jump into the consent agenda items. So let's see, it's recommended the board approve the following. So there is a schedule that should be attached for our meetings. So you should see that there, the 2025-26 meeting schedule. And there are a few policy items. So there's a resolution for electronic meetings. It's a Utah requirement, and We need to update the new chair, and there's a reaffirmation of previous items for the board. There's captioning, web accessibility, public broadcasting editorial integrity, and board meeting public comment policy. So again, these are consent agenda items. So you can take a look at those. And then there's a few removals. So removing of obsolete items. There should be filtering, aspirational statements from 2014, but it's not policy. And video recorded courses and events. That was written in 2016, but it's not applicable for our current tools and needs to be replaced. So if you guys could take a look and double check that. Also, there was one additional thing for the consent agenda. Let's see, that's appointment of Rachel Rout. Did I say that correctly, hopefully, for Business and Marketing Education Specialist for USBE, representing career and technical education. Rachel was recommended by the board's previous appointee and wasn't able to attend due to calendar conflicts. So those are our consent agenda items, if you guys can take a look. Let's see, they should have been made available before. So is there a motion to approve those items? Just looking for a motion to approve.
So moved, Kurt.
Awesome. And is there a second?
Second.
Awesome. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Awesome.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion carries. All right, we'll move down to the discussion items for today. So the first is the ARPA funds. So as you know, we've received a great deal of funding during COVID. That was the American Rescue Plan Act, I think, of 2021. And there was a number of projects that were tied to that. Two of those were the network backbone upgrades and the Utah Public Library's Wi-Fi upgrades. And so if we could turn time to Jim Stewart and Kelly Cole, they'll help give us some updates on those two projects.
Thank you. Good to be with you today, and thank you for the time we've been given. When we heard that there were ARPA funds available, we immediately were asked to put together some plans, and Kevin put together a plan to be able to upgrade our backbone. And of the nearly $20 million that we've received in ARPA funding, about 5.7 million of that will go to upgrade our backbone. The backbone is a key element of the UETN network, and really all of the data and the communications back and forth and out to the internet and all that you do and rely on for the network is reliant on that backbone. And we've had 100 gig circuits there, but we are in a process now of upgrading to 400 gig circuits. The backbone is really comprised of two separate networks: the packet network, which is really does the routing and signaling and sending of those packets around the network, and the optical network, which is underneath that, and it helps us to take dark fiber like that and makes it possible then to layer on packet network over that. My appreciation very much to Kevin Quire and to members of his staff and other members at UEN for the great work that they're doing there. The money was allocated in September of last year, finally approved, and Kevin was quite concerned about how quickly we could get this implemented. And happy to report that recently he came to me and said that we have really completed most of that work. In fact, to the point where we have several circuits and other things that are up and working in production mode. And over the next 2 or 3 months, Kevin plans to bring all of the circuits. We've provided some detail to you to show you all of the areas that we're going to be upgrading and give you that information, and we're happy to answer questions. But that said, I'd just like to turn the time over to Kevin, and he will walk us through the important work that he's been doing and give us an update as to where he is on this project. Kevin?
Yeah, hi. My name is Kevin Quire. I'm the Associate Director for Network Architecture here at UEN. I'm going to share a document here real quick. Under the do this real quick. Under the board materials, there are 3 attachments that talk about this. There's a good write-up that Jim and I did that explain a lot of this. But can everyone hear me okay and see this?
We can see and hear, Kevin. Thank you.
Okay, great. So this is what we call the backbone for UEN. It spans the entire state from Logan all the way down to St. George, and it hits all of the major higher ed locations. So what you see here is really where we aggregate all of the K through 12 traffic and also the higher ed traffic. The way to think of the backbone is really kind of the interstate system for the internet within the state of Utah. We have to have really large capacity on this backbone or interstate system in order to pass all of the traffic. So today, it is largely 100 gigabits per second. We are in the process of upgrading the majority of the network to 400 gigabits per second. We expect to be done with this project probably, we're expecting first quarter of next year. We've got about half of the project completed now. We now have today 400 gig routers at the U, SLCC, and we're upgrading UVU next week. And we've also upgraded one of our core sites in St. George to 400 gig. But the rest of the locations, like I said, we expect to have those done within the next 2 to 3 months. The other interesting thing to note about the backbone is historically, up until 10 years ago, the backbone was largely owned. The equipment was owned and the fiber was owned by our telco vendors. Lumen owned most of the equipment and the fiber. Starting back about 2012, we started to purchase our own fiber on these backbone segments and to buy a lot of our own equipment. We're now at a point after this project where we will own all of the fiber and equipment from Richfield North, and then we will be owning all of the equipment south of Richfield down to St. George. This includes only the backbone. It does not include school district equipment or equipment out to individual schools. So with this owned infrastructure, we no longer have to worry about potentially having equipment taken back from us or circuits turned off or anything like that. So we own it. We are also able to turn up circuits, additional capacity circuits in a matter of weeks, as opposed to an 18-month cycle when we E-rate them. So where we have to go out and lease circuits where we do not own, we have to go through a approximately 18-month cycle to get bandwidth turned up. Now with this infrastructure, we can turn up capacity 400 gig circuits or 100 gig circuits. We can get those turned up in a matter of days. I think that's largely what I had to go over. Are there any questions?
Good. Chair Baum, do you mind if I just give a little bit of background?
Yes,
To the
definitely.
network
Please.
here for those that maybe aren't as familiar. And Kevin, thanks for sharing this. I think, Jim, you described it yesterday as this is sort of managing an interstate system with redundancy. And this is literally our backbone to over 2,000 locations throughout the state that we provide connectivity for. And every year through the E-rate program, we contract a few hundred of those on a 5-year rotating contract term out to charter schools, public schools, libraries, health clinics. But this backbone literally is what enables that capability. So that's just a little bit of background for those that maybe aren't as familiar with our network.
Thank you.
Spencer.
All right. And Kelly Cole will give us an update on the public libraries.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm Kelly Cole and I'm with UETN and I'm over strategic initiatives. And I've had the pleasure of working with several teams in our office and with the state library. Kara's here. And she's been part of some of this since she's gotten here, but we worked quite a bit with her predecessor at the state library. I'm going to talk about ARPA, but I'm also going to talk about a few projects leading up to ARPA because I think that I'm going to share my screen before I start getting too far into this. Okay, can you see that okay? Okay, great. So I thought it was the previous presentation talking about the new Utah. I feel like my presentation is a little bit of the new library kind of structure that we're seeing within the state of Utah. You know, the libraries are really becoming a lot more than just books and the written materials that of our youth. And you know, the libraries have become community centers in Utah, and particularly around technology. So when you go into, you know, today's library, you're not just seeing the stacks of books, but you're seeing the computer centers, and you're seeing even like children coming into the library for sometimes homeschooling, sometimes even things like gaming and esports, bringing those kids in as an entry point into being introduced to the libraries. When I was working recently with the state library on a project, I was able to work with their data scientists, and there's some really compelling stats around library usage in Utah. For example, in 2023, there were about 10 million library visits. If you think of how many times somebody is walking in and out of a library, and obviously there are repeat visitors, but just even those greater statistics. And then you had about 1.6 million registered users that have kind of an active library card, which is about half of our population. And then when you look at a really interesting stat is the attendees of library programs were at about 1.7 million. So individuals that had, you know, and obviously there's people that have gone to more than one session, but the library use is very high. And then when you look at the technology usage in the library, you had about 973,000 sessions at the actual computer, sitting down and using the computers. And then when you look at just somebody bringing their device into the library and logging into the Wi-Fi across Utah, it's 6.7 million Wi-Fi sessions in 2023, and I think that's continuing to increase. So I want to go through just several things that have happened in the last few years that have really helped support these efforts that are happening in the library. As many of you know, we have our E-rate team that helps to secure E-rate funding for both schools and libraries throughout Utah. And traditionally, the schools, the portion that E-rate doesn't pay, which we call the non-discounted portion, we've gotten a state appropriation to cover the internet connections to the schools. But for many years, the libraries, we procured E-rate funding for them. We were able to secure E-rate funding, but then that remaining part of their internet bill, which is probably about 30 to 35%, traditionally, the library itself was having to foot that bill. And what we were seeing is that in many cases, libraries would sort of undersubscribe to what they actually needed as far as internet service according to what their budget was. And so you would see differences in what kind of connection somebody in one part of the state would get versus another part of the state. So a few years ago, we kind of sat down and were able to figure out a way to cover that non-discounted portion for the libraries. And so now when libraries sign on to our network, and it's an opt-in to our network, they're able to have that full cost covered. And what's been able to happen from that is that because that cost is covered, as these contracts have renewed, we've been able to get them up to a minimum 1 gig standard for a library. And that also helps with, if you look at your network and having it more standardized, having more equal opportunity throughout the state for different patrons, it's really been a really significant thing for the libraries over the last few years. Then when the pandemic hit, previous to the pandemic, there were only about 16% of the libraries that were lending out hotspots to patrons. And then when the pandemic hit, there was a greater need for those kinds of devices being lent out to patrons. And so we were able to partner with the state library during that time and use CARES funding to support about 70 library locations lending out hotspots throughout their communities. And so as of 2021, and our CARES funding was all spent and taken care of by the end of 2020. And so January 2021 indicates kind of our spend for CARES. And so at that point, 76% of the libraries in Utah were circulating hotspots compared to that 16% that we started with at the beginning of the pandemic. The next funding source that came through after CARES was the ARPA funds, which is going to be kind of the bulk of the presentation. So in 2023, we were able to secure ARPA funds from the Department of Treasury to modernize the network infrastructure. Jim and Kevin did a great job of kind of explaining those network upgrades. And as Spencer and Lisa and I were working with the Treasury Department on this application, the network upgrades and the end user experience were very tied together in their ability to give us funding for the network upgrade. So they really wanted something paired with that would benefit the greater public. They wanted, in particular, free public Wi-Fi expansions were an eligible expense. And so we were able to kind of pair those network upgrades with upgrading Wi-Fi at libraries around Utah. And as I mentioned, we've been doing these upgrades to the actual pipe into the libraries, but then once you got into the libraries, depending on the library budget, they may or may not have been able to have sufficient Wi-Fi to cover within the buildings. And so we offered the opportunity to libraries within our network to upgrade their Wi-Fi, and we had about 54 of them that opted in. And I would say we have Kira and Jolene from our team that are on this call right now, but they had really developed a strong relationship with these libraries. And so when this funding opportunity came up, those relationships that they had in place really helped to get these libraries to sign on to upgrade their Wi-Fi. And they were able to do access point upgrades, and that included even things like cabling. Some of them asked for upgraded power supply, which was needed to do those upgrades. And then also some firewalls were also purchased to improve security as part of that upgrade. And I have a list. These are the libraries that were part of library systems, and then the individual branches that most of them have already done their upgrade. There are a few that are pending for 2025, but the vast majority of these are already complete. And then individual libraries that were not part of a specific library system are listed on this slide. And then our next phase of trying to secure funding is we've also submitted an application to the Department of Commerce, where we again have reached out to the libraries and given them the opportunity to make requests for upgraded computer centers and on-site digital tools. They were able to ask for more devices to lend out to the public. And then also we've asked for some funding for technical trainings for librarians. And then there are also other portions of that grant that go beyond just libraries. But for the library portion, these are the things that we have asked for in that proposal. And before I take any questions, I wanted to just show a video that our media team has produced that really shows what kind of impact that ARPA project is having on the ground in Utah. And it's kind of the first of a couple of videos that we'll be producing around ARPA. So I'm just going to turn on the video. It's just a few minutes.
Utah's public libraries provide critical resources to our communities, including access to the internet we've all come to depend on. Unfortunately, many libraries have struggled to afford keeping pace with the rapidly changing digital services Utahns need.
The libraries had Wi-Fi for since the building was created in 2012, since the building was built in 2012. But that's the only Wi-Fi that we've had in the building. And so the Wi-Fi project was really to upgrade to the latest standards and also to cover the outside. We have a bit of a quad area that the community uses for a lot of different events.
Our switches all over the building were 1 gig ports, and all of the new Wi-Fi offered the ability to connect at 2.5 gigabit. And so even if we replaced some wireless access points, we knew that we still wouldn't get the best out of it.
Whether people, like, maybe they have Wi-Fi at home, but the work environment here is quieter, and so they come to use this. Or maybe they don't have access to the internet at home. They come in. I mean, we have so many people using our computers and using our study spaces all the time. And so having a place where people can come and they know that they can get reliable connectivity is really important.
A few years ago, the Utah Education Network secured funding so that all of the libraries that are members of UEN's consortium have their internet connectivity costs covered through a combination of state and federal funding. However, many libraries lacked the local Wi-Fi infrastructure to ensure that this high-speed broadband made it to the individual patrons. That's why UEN developed the Wi-Fi Improvement Project as a part of an initiative funded by the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA. One of the main goals of ARPA is to provide high-speed internet access to the public. Through this project, 54 libraries on the UEN network have been updating their Wi-Fi equipment, expanding and improving digital access in their communities.
I think it gives patrons and staff just more freedom to be able to locate resources, to find them. And, all of the things that we do online, whether it's, looking up a video on how to fix something. If I need to fix a piece of equipment in the library, I can just look it up on my cell phone. Super easy on the spot rather than having to go back to my desk.
Best things about this project is that our coverage is just more complete, even inside the building. So with this project, we were able to purchase a next level of access points that have really allowed us to cover a better area.
We were able to upgrade all of our Wi-Fi access points, our firewall, and some other equipment, just so that we could upgrade our Wi-Fi in the library. And then we've also added some access points outside on the north and south sides of the building to provide internet access outside 24/7.
One of the things that's been great with this upgrade is that we're now able to track how many people are connecting to our Wi-Fi. And over the last 2 months, it's been well over 200,000 each month, which is kind of incredible in a community of about 120,000.
On a monthly basis, we probably have well over 2,000 connections. And most of those are actually new connections. Of existing connections, we probably have closer to 5,000 connections.
Just the support that UEN provided was amazing.
Now community members can jump on the Wi-Fi in every corner of these buildings and in many outdoor spaces. It's more than a convenience. It's bringing essential digital opportunities for education, economic growth, and community engagement into the heart of Utah communities. To learn about this project and more about UEN, visit uen.org.
Okay. So our media team did a great job on that video. Katie, Fernando, Danny Sloan did the voiceover, and then Jen Gibbs' team helped us with some of the scripting on that. And I just wanted to take any questions about the project before we move on to the next agenda item.
All right, any questions, guys? I'm looking in the chat too, so if you don't see anything there.
And I'll put the video in the chat so that people have it.
That'd be great. Any questions, anyone? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, thank you so much, Kelly, and thank you, Jim. We really appreciate those updates. Thank you. All right, moving along with the agenda then. Next, we'll have some reports from our advisory councils. So the board will hear from representatives from UEN Advisory Council. The agenda is linked below. Let's see. For new board members, the role of the advisory councils is outlined, and there's some procedures that should be linked as well. So let's see. Rich Gaisford will report on yesterday's advisory council meeting. Rich. Did I pronounce? Is it Gaisford?
Oh, you got the name right.
Okay, good.
That way. It's just that Rick couldn't figure out where the microphone button.
Rick, I apologize. Thank you so much.
So now that we have discovered where the button actually is, it's actually residing, we're in much better shape. So and so I just wanted to we met with the new and revised Education Advisory Council yesterday in our meeting in that. As many of you are aware, one of the things that came out of the strategic planning was to make the advisory councils perhaps a little bit smaller, a little bit more nimble, particularly as it related to the Education Advisory Council. We've previously had a little over, I think just over 20 members, 20 to 25 members of the council representing various constituencies. We spent some time earlier this year looking at where are the most, what are the key areas that we need to be focused on, and we then made recommendations to the board. The board approved those, and we now have a new advisory council consisting of 13 members. And proud to report that yesterday when we met, we had a quorum for the first time in, well, about a year and a half. So we were actually able to take care of some action items that have been like approving minutes that we couldn't do prior to that. And so we were able to do that. But we also had a great opportunity to, one, get to know each other a little bit better and to talk a little bit about the advisory council, its role and its at UEN, and how it can assist the board in getting background information or additional information that could be useful for the board and make recommendations to the board as needed. We had the same, a little bit more in-depth presentation yesterday on the ARPA projects that Kevin Quire just gave to you. It was absolutely fascinating to see the growth in UEN. Sometimes those numbers seem a little bit, you'd say 400 or 100, and when you have to sort of sit back and think about what that really means and realize the capacity that we have. And I think it's one of the things that Kevin so well pointed out is how they're positioning themselves, not just for now, but to be into the future, to be able to meet not only the current needs, but the needs that will be imposed upon the network as it continues to grow somewhat exponentially even today. And so I think it was great to see that. I can tell you that from my meeting with people from across the country, everyone knows about UEN, and everyone would like to have UEN. And some would like to think that they have a UEN, but they really don't, because when you really get into what's being provided to schools and to universities, and all, it's a phenomenal value and project. And so it was great to see that. Kevin was able to confirm that, it's not just, you think about the traffic that goes across this freeway, that we have, but traffic that equals in petabytes of information that is flowing on this network every month. And that's a one with a whole lot of zeros after it, just so you know. And then so we had that, and then we also talked about the library project. And how important that is, particularly in education and K-12 education, how important that is, that these are libraries around the state in rural communities and that. And so where bandwidth may be and high speed might be a little bit more challenged, to be able to have that at their library and to be able to take advantage of that resource in their local community, how important that is. And so that work on the libraries was critical, and it's going to be a great support, not only to, as we have learned that, if sometimes when we do things for K-12, it also impacts higher ed and vice versa. As we do those things, it works both ways, and everyone benefits in the end. And so that came out of those presentations as well. And then we also had a discussion yesterday on software service that UEM provides. And UEN has been an aggregator and a helper in helping us to get tools and resources for students and teachers at costs that are way below what individual LEAs or districts or schools or departments or whatever would have to pay by being able to aggregate that at the state level and offer the state level. And so Jacinto gave us a great overview of the things that they can do, the project, the software that's coming up for renewal. We had a discussion on, well, how do we make these economies of scale that we're able to get at UEN better known at the legislative level, so that when they see these requests, it's not just a request for funding. it's really a request for, it is a request for funding, but at substantial savings that could be made to the schools and the districts, and overall saving the taxpayers of Utah millions of dollars that could be that would be spent otherwise on licensing, and that we're able to aggregate that and to get those at a lower price, and also being able to help move the state forward. I think a good example of that is something that UEN helped to do this last in the last few months, is that we ran an RFP at the state level to put to seeking solutions for AI tools for teachers and students. These would be typically what we might call a walled garden, where the data and privacy issues are taken care of and are there, but students and teachers are able to take advantage of some of the great tools and resources that AI is doing. We were able to go out and to do an RFP for pricing, and not that there was funding attached to actually do the purchasing, but at least for the LEAs that they'd be able to purchase off of that. And the team at UEN did a fabulous job on that. 3 products came out of that and were put on contract: Magic School AI, and SkillStruck received those contracts in that. And the savings are phenomenal. What that's allowed now is that many of our districts and schools now in the K-12 arena are taking advantage of that, of those cost savings now, and have been able to purchase and be able to start moving forward on their implementation of quality AI resources and that, and really being able to take advantage of some of the really great things that AI is going to be able to, able to do. And so UEN was instrumental in making that happen, and can be able to do that for other products and that as well. And I think that was part of what came out of that discussion on software as a service. And so we'd just like to make sure that those things that UEN is doing in that to help provide better cost and better resources and more equitable access to resources. And I think that's the other key element there is the equitable access, that these resources and pricing are available not just to the large districts that have volume and can do those things on their own, but to the smallest districts, the Daggett, the Paiute of the districts of the state that have just a few hundred students, can also take advantage of those substantial savings in that. So that was pretty much our meeting, and then we also did our open meeting training. So that was a very exciting few moments as well. So, but that's my report on the Education Advisory Council. I'd be willing to take any questions that you might have.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, you'll get to have open meeting training a second time today here too as well. So you'll be double trained. Any questions folks may have for Rick? Let's see, I'm looking to the chat, see if there's anything over there. Any questions?
Looks like
Nope.
none. I like that.
Well, Rick, thank you. And again, I echo what you mentioned about the benefit of being able to have, scale in purchasing and having that help a lot of the districts that are much smaller in size. And it's just one of the things I love about being part of UETN is seeing that and the difference, the impact it's making. So thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good day now.
You too. All right. Let's see here. We won't have an update from the Telehealth Council. They've not met recently.
Actually, Christina, sorry. Sarah Bauman is on.
Oh, do we? Okay. My
they
apologies.
didn't meet this week, but they did meet in October.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Yes.
Well, Sarah, we'll
That's an
turn time
omission
to you
on my
then.
part.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thanks.
No, you're great.
Thank you, Christina. And so I'm Sarah Bauman. I'm the director of the Utah Telehealth Network. And I wanted to pause for a minute to allow Tim Lovell to introduce himself, because I know you joined after the intros, Tim. So I don't know if you want to take a minute.
Yeah, my apologies for being late to the first meeting. That's not a great first impression. So I apologize for that, but I'm honored to be joining in with these illustrious individuals that are part of the board, and I've certainly enjoyed hearing the updates that have happened thus far. Just by way of introduction, I work for Intermountain Health within telehealth. A lot of my experience has been with bringing online our Intermountain Connect Care direct-to-consumer services. So have more of an angle on the outpatient side of telehealth services, but as part of Intermountain, filling that role as the urban hospital side of the board membership here, and kind of weighing on those things. Our team is also pretty involved in the school-based telehealth program and offering those visits, and is have been one of the vendors that have kind of stepped up to offer that and provide that. And I think that's a great opportunity for overlap for both both the healthcare and the education side of our group here. So it's a little bit about me. I've been with Intermountain Health for about 10 years. Have background in both technology and healthcare. I left for a brief stint with American Express in human resources, get some experience on the leadership side of things, and happy to be back in healthcare. That's a little bit about me.
Well, we're grateful to have you.
Any
Thank you and
questions?
welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. And then I also just wanted to mention, we do have Kelly Smith here. He is from Blue Mountain Hospital. He's the vice chair of our advisory council. So Kelly, as I do my report, feel free to jump in if you have anything to add, or if you want to correct me. I'm actually going to share my screen right now. You all see that?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so as Spencer mentioned, we did meet in October. We actually had our retreat, which is our annual strategic planning retreat. And so I'm going to give you a very high-level summary of some things that came out of that retreat and talk about next steps. So we had 3 main goals. We do have several new members to the advisory council, which is great. We had excellent participation and engagement. It was an in-person meeting at EBC, and the advisory council members were also able to tour the NOC and meet the folks behind the managed security services and really see the command center for the network, which I think is always really a great thing to have a visual of. So we dug into the history of UTN, which dates back to 1996, when the first site was connected to the network. At that time, it was part of U of U's health system, and then transitioned in 2014 to merge with UEN per state statute. We spent quite a bit of time on the state statute, and I'm going to talk about that in the next slides. We also did a SWOT analysis. We looked at organizational capacity, so including staffing, technical expertise, funding, network architecture. And then we did a comprehensive overview of our services. So that's network services, the USAC filing that we do for the hospitals and clinics. We have about 70, or we do have 70 clinics and hospitals that receive that financial discount through the Healthcare Connect Fund provided through the FCC USAC, and then managed security services and school-based telehealth. And then for item number 3, we still have some work to do in terms of the prioritization, and I'll talk about that as well, and then finalizing the strategic plan. So these are not, I actually have a sort of multi-page Google Doc that the advisory council has been working on since the retreat. And we didn't want to sort of give you that level of detail, but I did want to highlight some of the things that came out of the retreat in terms of the needs and the gaps. So the first thing on here is the needs assessment to understand what the telehealth needs for the state of Utah are, and making recommendations to the governor and the legislature. So this is actually outlined in the state statute. And this is something that the leadership team within UETN has been discussing. And we've been talking with the Department of Health and Human Services about, because it really states that we will partner with the Department of Health to make those recommendations. And it's something that we realize that we certainly can't do on our own. And we talked about, when we're looking at some of the organizational capacity, the need for clinical expertise to be at the table, and a number of other stakeholders that we identified. So that was another thing that we did during the retreat, is really look at who was in the room and who really needed to be in the room, and have input into our strategic plan, but specifically also into our ability to fulfill the state statute, essentially. We also talked a lot about the need for a telehealth champion. Right now, there are a number of entities going to the state legislature and making either recommendations or wanting information about telehealth, and there isn't a comprehensive voice for telehealth. And so that's something that the advisory council really was interested in developing. We have a number of hospitals and clinics that are our members that are on our advisory council. And so they really reported out that there is a lack of educational outreach and resource delivery for them to be able to understand where the opportunities are for telehealth and how they can really take advantage of those opportunities. And so we're looking to develop additional resources for the hospitals and clinics, and then digital access and resources for patients. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Implementation support came up again and again, both on the healthcare side and the school side, and that is obviously connected to some of those resource delivery opportunities. But just having on-the-ground support to be able to actually implement something that we learned with the school-based program is that we were able to purchase all of these devices. We purchased 174 devices for 21 school districts focused on the rural and Title I schools. And we deployed those devices, but the ability for the schools to actually utilize them and develop programs and sustain programs requires a lot of other things to be in place. And so we're looking at it more holistically and realizing that technology by itself cannot solve a problem. And then the last thing on here is the cybersecurity and HIPAA compliance. So this is something that we are continually trying to support our healthcare clinics and hospitals with. And there's a wide array, and I think Kurt can attest to this, and Kelly from Blue Mountain, I guess IT capacity internally with the hospitals and clinics. And so some of them have more capacity than others. And so we're looking at how we can address some of their needs from a technology and technology support perspective. So here are, and you'll see it says TBD, because we actually have to have our next meeting after our retreat still. And so these are not finalized, but they are the things that came out of the retreat that the advisory council members really that sort of came to the top from our retreat. So the first one is partnering with the Department of Health and Human Services and other stakeholders, like I mentioned, to do a really comprehensive statewide needs assessment for the state of Utah and develop and deliver recommendations to the governor and the state legislature. So that really speaks to the state statute. The second one, developing and delivering educational materials. So this includes best practices, trainings to support telehealth utilization for hospitals and healthcare centers. And then also supporting the Utah State Digital Access Plan. So we were able to work with Kelly to respond to the NTIA grant opportunity. I know that was discussed in a former board meeting, and included in that request was the ability to work with consultants to develop trainings that would then be provided on site or via online courses for hospitals and clinics to help really increase digital literacy and the ability for patients to access telehealth, and also the ability for hospitals and clinics to deliver telehealth services. And then developing and implementing strategies to support healthcare providers and schools in the areas of telehealth technology, software, program development, and fundraising. There's a lot included in that. And so there may be, what I'm imagining will happen when we actually get to the strategic plan, is we're actually going to build logic models and strategies with metrics and objectives and goals related to each of these things. Because UTN, has itself limited capacity. So we're really mindful of what do we do best, and really staying focused on the technology and technical assistance aspects and partnering with folks in terms of more of the medical or clinical pieces. And then we will be conducting a survey of all of our healthcare sites, just, to make sure that the services that we're delivering are meeting the needs of the hospitals and clinics. And then working to increase network reliability wherever we can. And then, continuing to ensure affordability, which is primarily through the Healthcare Connect fund program, but also possibly through some grant fundraising efforts. We do our own HIPAA third-party compliance, and we support our hospitals and clinics in doing the same thing, but really they're very linked. Our policies that relate to HIPAA compliance are also connected to our hospitals and clinics policies. And then addressing healthcare security needs, we've really been working to find resources that are either at the federal level or state level, resources that we can provide ourselves to help the hospitals and clinics really address their security needs. And that includes things like penetration tests and like on-site trainings related to even, basically keeping your computer safe or making sure that the physical space is secure. And so those are things that a lot of the hospitals and clinics have mentioned that they have a need for. And so we're looking forward to working together to address those needs. Okay, so the next thing on here is the Deb LaMarche Award, which I think you all are aware of from our call for nominations. We were really excited this year. We were able to present at the Rural Healthcare Association of Utah conference. And our award recipient this year was Kelsey Green, who's the Assistant Vice President of the Virtual Patient Logistics Center for HCA Healthcare. Kelsey was instrumental in implementing several telehealth and AI programs across 8 Utah hospitals and associated care sites. And these innovative technologies and approaches strengthen the results of their stroke program, improved outcomes for patients, and accelerated access to the right level of care by operating like a seamless system of hospitals. Included in the AI implementation was software that helps to identify life-threatening conditions and recommend treatment options. And this award is given annually. And in the past, we've actually awarded it, I think, at the tech conference in Utah, but we will be continuing to award it at the Rural Healthcare Association of Utah conference. So it was really exciting to be there in person, and they included it with the other RAU awards. So it was a really wonderful experience. And we invited some members of Kelsey's team to come and speak as well. So it was really just a wonderful experience and well-deserved award for her. So I wanted to pause there and see, Kelly, if you had anything to add.
I think you covered it pretty well. It was an excellent meeting that we were able to have with everyone, and I love the kind of the highlights that Sarah was able to pull out of it.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. And I would say just meeting in person was really incredible. And just from a relationship building perspective, because as you all know, we're on Zoom and it's hard to build relationships via Zoom. But one other thing I wanted to mention is that, there were a lot of, in our SWOT analysis, threats and that came out and opportunities also. But one of the things I was thinking of when we were watching the earlier presentation about the future of Utah is a statistic that I heard at the RAW conference, actually, and we talked a little bit about at the advisory council. There were a couple of things. Shortages in healthcare personnel is a real threat for our hospitals and clinics. And then there are 418 hospitals that are at risk for closure in rural communities in Utah. So those are things that I think are directly related to the telehealth services that we're providing, both for in the healthcare, in the hospitals, in healthcare centers, and in the schools. So just wanted to add that in there. More to come. We'll be really fleshing this out and developing a strategic plan that will feed up into the UETN strategic plan. So I want to stop there, and if we have time, I wanted to introduce Nikki Parasho, who's the program director for NRTRC, to do a short presentation. I'll stop sharing my.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Nikki Parasho, Program Director for the Northwest Regional Telehealth Resource Center, HRSA-funded grant program around providing technical assistance, which is basically answering questions and providing support for healthcare entities that have questions around telehealth. We are in our fourth and final year of this grant, and so I wanted to take this opportunity to just give a couple of highlights of our year 3. Um, can you all see my screen? Okay, great.
Yes.
So we are the Northwest region. We cover the Northwest region, which includes Utah. We also have Alaska, Idaho, Montana, Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Wyoming. Very vast geography, a lot of rural and frontier areas. And so really get to work with a lot of experienced folk in telehealth and also get to guide a lot of not so experienced individuals. And we also get to the opportunity to lean on our partners for support. So within UTN, some things within UEN that I'll touch on in a minute, Tim's team at Intermountain Health, and then University of Utah Health as well. So our grant year, September 1st to August 31st, we were just kind of tallying the numbers. We're actually going to Rockville for a HRSA meeting this next week. And during the 12-month period, we had 333 total technical assistance requests. And so these come from anywhere from independent providers that want to do telehealth. We get a lot of questions around billing, reimbursement, policy, licensure, sustainability, just you name it, telehealth, the questions, we get it. We reached about 16,000 individuals with the outreach that we do, and that's exhibiting. We get invited to speak on areas that we are very knowledgeable in. We've done quite a bit in Utah. One of the highlights that I'll mention later is RAW. And these are just some of the other numbers, the website views, our listserv. We do create telehealth training courses, and these are housed within Canvas. And a lot of them come with continuing education credits and certificates of completion. So when Sarah mentioned a lot of the Utah partners and healthcare centers that need additional education and resources, it's really great to be able to direct them to this site where they can take these telehealth training courses at no cost. Last year we had 13,000 register and we had 9,000 complete. And then telehealth access points. I'll get into that in just a minute, but we are currently mapping 165 of those. Some of our year 3 highlights. I had the opportunity to testify for the United States Finance Committee on Healthcare about the Medicare waivers that are in place currently around telehealth. And unfortunately, those are still in limbo. If Congress chooses not to extend them by December 31st, there's going to be a lot of healthcare providers and telehealth recipients that are scrambling and left without access to care. So we're fairly confident that there'll be a last minute punt by Congress. Really, really hopeful, but there's an opportunity that might not happen. So we have to be prepared for that as well. We hosted a conference. This year we had at the University of Washington in Seattle. We had over 150 attendees and 2.5 days of great speakers. We had a pre-conference workshop on quality improvement in telehealth. It was just a great event, and had a lot of positive feedback from the attendees about the value that it brought to them and their practice in telehealth. And then finally, just recently had the opportunity to attend and present at the Rural Health Association of Utah's conference. It was great to connect and just kind of reinforce what's happening in healthcare, as you know, Sarah mentioned, the large workforce shortage and the importance of telehealth in solving that. And then we also, for the first time that we've held this grant for this 4-year period, had the opportunity to travel to Alaska, which was one of our states, and speak at the Federal Office of Rural Health Policy, or FORPS, meeting on telehealth and digital inclusion. We were fortunate enough to head up to Seward and see the critical access hospital there that is managed by Providence, but actually ran by the city of Seward, or owned by the city of Seward. And then also the Alaska Native Medical Center and the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium, which was, and my background as a nurse, I've been in healthcare for 20 plus years. And that medical center is the most amazing medical center I've ever encountered. And if anybody wants to talk off the record about that, I'm happy to share kind of some of the things that we learned there. I mentioned TAPS, telehealth access points. So this is something we started mapping nationally about a year and a half ago, and this kind of goes hand in hand with what Kelly Cole was talking about early in their library program. This is a piece of it for the broadband expansion and broadband availability. What a TAP is a existing community established anchor point. So maybe a library, maybe a senior center, maybe a fire station, but a community anchor institute that is dedicated to providing a private space for individual to come in and have a telehealth visit. They outfit it with a device, so a computer, a tablet, something that has a camera, a microphone, and a speaker, and then connectivity to be able to hold the or support the video visit. So if any of you know of any of these, please go to our website and add it. I think we have 4 in Utah currently. So we were really excited to map 165 of these across the nation. And then finally, what I'm going to close on is we do an annual telehealth survey for our 7 states. And we ask, probably about 40 questions. This is our 5th year doing the survey, so they're all listed on the NRTRC website under research. And we ask very similar questions. Of course, they change because telehealth is evolving and there's a lot more about digital access, digital inclusion, digital literacy. And it's been interesting to see kind of the growth and the changes. And then what we do is we benchmark and measure year to year the changes. And this year, I thought this was really interesting. I think our end this year was around 1,000. We had 1,000 people complete the survey, and the top 2 barriers to implementing telehealth was all around patients, actually. And the number 1 was the lack of patient resources, so internet space and literacy. And the second one was knowledge gaps about telehealth by patients. So people still don't know what telehealth is or how to use it and how it can be a benefit. So that was really interesting to me. So if you want to get a hold of us, info@nrtrc.org, or you can do UTN, and Sarah knows how to find us. But appreciate your time.
And I know, Nikki, just real quick, because I know there's some new board members. NRTRC sits within UETN via a HRSA grant. And so we serve as the parent organization, and the grant is awarded basically to the University of Utah. The new grant NOFA will be coming out in January. It's just background information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. And my apologies for not recognizing you guys did have a very fantastic update. So thank you. We appreciate that. We'll move now to Director Spencer Jenkins for his update.
Thank you, Chair Bauman. Thanks to the staff and all their reporting today. I'm aware that a majority of our board has been on the board for less than a year and probably had maybe no more than a couple of board meetings. And so apologies, have covered a lot of ground today that we're in some pretty deep weeds. So if you don't have questions today, I understand, because we just covered a lot. Hopefully we'll get to where we're covering stuff that you are recognizing and are more familiar with. And but thank you for your patience. I will jump through quickly just a few very fluffy updates. I do want to touch a little bit on our legislative ask. I think many of you know the governor came out with his legislative priorities this past week, and the board adopted legislative priorities last August in 3 main categories. The first category is the video conferencing software. That's essentially Zoom licensing. For the past 5 years, UEN has held the license, or UETN has had the license for all of K-12 for Zoom. What we're attempting to do here is get funding to fund both K-12 and higher ed on an ongoing basis. This was done through some really heavy negotiation with Zoom, but we got some extremely advantageous pricing that I don't think would come any other way. The board actually adopted a $4 million request last August. We've since been able to get it down to $2.154 million. Our hope is the state will fund this. The governor did fund $4 million one time, so that means it'll last maybe a couple of years if funded solely on those funds. That's one stop on the road here over the next few months. Hopefully, as we get into the legislative session, we'll get a better idea of what our opportunities are. Next Monday, legislative leadership will be announcing new revenues. That'll kind of set the table for the legislative session for, I think, most of us in this meeting. So we'll know a little bit more as we get into the new year, but I wanted to at least give this update of where things stand in relation to the governor's recommendations. A few events just to touch on. I think a lot of you are familiar with SaintCon. This is probably the largest security conference in Utah held each year. We're a key sponsor to this. Our cybersecurity director, Troy Jessup, helps lead this. There's an education track that's associated with it, always well attended, always a good eye-opener to see kind of what's on what I would say sort of the underbelly of networking and security. So if you're ever interested in attending something that gives you really broad and deep exposure to cybersecurity issues, this conference is always one of the most fascinating, at least to me anyway. Sarah and Nikki mentioned the Rural Health Conference this last month. Thanks to Sarah and her team, we had a few others there presenting. We hope we'll continue in supporting that conference. That touches on a lot of people that are on our advisory committee, frankly, right, Sarah, that as they meet more broadly around healthcare, being able to talk telehealth is a great audience there. Another sort of first conference this past month, also UVU MakerCon. Christina, I don't know if you were a part of this, but UETN certainly had a significant presence there. As I understand it, this is slightly different than the USET conference that many of you are familiar with, the EdTech conference that is put on each year that we support. This is more specific to hands-on and experiential learning, and UETN, of course, is a big proponent of that through the EdTech tools we use. But again, great to have the presence there. A quick note, there's a series that our team produces here called Research Quest. It's a partnership with the National History Museum at the University of Utah, but it just recently got a great award from NEDA, which is a public media consortium. And if you've ever this is basically a virtual museum tour curriculum that's available to high schools and middle schools. It's a pretty rich resource, and that's also aligned to core curriculum in the state, which is pretty unique. But they got a significant award. This is a big national award that they received, so we wanted to note them. A part of that team, you'll notice Laura Gibbons. Laura joined our team here in July. She's part of our professional development team. Anyone that's been exposed to our professional development team will know they're sort of rock stars in the ed tech world or in the professional development world. And Laura is no exception. She was just recently given a fellowship by the National Science and Teaching Association. The NSTA has been around about 80 years. It's not a small association. And so to get a fellowship like this is quite significant. And so we did want to publicly recognize Laura and her work. I'm sure a lot of what qualifies her for this opportunity predates her time at UETN, but we're excited to have her as part of our team here at UETN. Also, just a quick note, we do have a podcast on the education side. I want to note this particular episode because a board member of ours, Rich Nye, was on this episode. I would encourage you to go listen to it. It was an interesting conversation, and I guess I'll leave the surprise at the end that Rich notes what he would love AI to do, which Rich, I would agree with. I would hope AI can take over that as well. I won't blow the surprise, so if you want to go listen to it or at least fast forward to the last few minutes, you can hear Rich talk about what he hopes AI to help do for us in our lives. And then just lastly, just wanted to note a new pilot that we're exploring. This is a little bit, I wouldn't say part of the core of what we do, but it's reflective of UETN and its statewide reach. There is a multi-state consortium of groups largely based at higher education institutions in Oregon, Nevada, and California. And what they've done is pulled together existing automated cameras and added new ones into a network that uses AI to pick up wildfires. As you'll note on this map, Utah is a little bit of a donut hole. We have 2 cameras in the state right now connected to this network. They are FAA cameras. And so through the University of Nevada, Reno, we've been contacted by the BLM to explore the possibility of expanding this into Utah. So we've been talking to the State Forestry and Fire Division over at Department of Natural Resources, as well as the BLM, and we hope to be a facilitator there, technologically speaking. We've got 1 camera up in Frisco Peak where we have existing equipment, and we hope to put a few more, and we'll keep you posted on this. But I wanted to note this because it sort of exemplifies UETN's capabilities at a state level. We certainly don't want to be leading the charge as a technology service organization, but we work to be in support of what you all are trying to do for your business, for your customers. And this is yet one of those. We're working closely in partnership with the University of Utah, who has, through their supercomputing folks, Joe Breen there, as well as Forestry and Fire and the BLM. And we hope through that, they'll sort of be the business decision makers and lead, and we'll provide that technical expertise in the background. But that is a real quick jump through of some updates just to add to what's already been shared. And if I can just close by saying thanks to not only our staff here at UETN, we have some incredibly talented staff. Our engineering staff, Kevin Quire, I think Kiera had to hop off, our project management staff. She's done a huge amount of work with our libraries. They're kind of what I'd call a newer customer of ours, where we've seen a lot of growth there. So we appreciate all the work that's done there. But finally, thanks to all of you. Thanks for taking time this afternoon. We really do. This is a unique governing board in the sense that you are our customers. And so we hope as you get more familiar with us, or if you're like Eric Hawley, who probably was here a lot longer before UETN even existed, but you can hopefully advise us on directions in the future. What we hope you'll see in the coming months is some strategic planning work that we hope to float up to the board to engage on. So with that, Christina, I'll stop talking, and you've heard from
that's
us enough, so
fantastic.
I'd love to hear
Thank
any
you.
questions or comments.
Great update. I know that we're all kind of waiting with bated breath on how this session's going to go in terms of revenues and tax or budget cuts and things like that. So yeah, thank you for that update. We'll be anxious to get updates on those requests and where those land. So thank you. All right, moving along. It is a mandatory requirement for us to be in compliance with the Utah Open Public Meeting Act that we need to have training. And so we're going to watch that short video now. It's about 8 to 10 minutes, I think, and then we'll officially be trained. So everyone buckle up for that. Spencer, who's going to be sharing that video? Is that?
I believe, Jen, do you have that queued up? I apologize. Oh, okay. I'm getting a no from Laura. I'm getting some blank stares. So I'm wondering if I can try and pull it up real quickly here.
Okay.
We'll do that here real quickly.
Sorry about that, Spencer. I do have it.
Oh, you do? Okay, I was going to say, I have it ready right now if you need it, if you want me to roll it.
Here we go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sorry about the moment. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Let's make sure we have audio. Perfect.
So what is the Open and Public Meetings Act? It's the state law that ensures government actions and deliberations are openly conducted. Before we continue, keep in mind that this video is an overview and exceptions may exist based on your entity type. We focus on local government, not state requirements. When in doubt, read the law and consult with your legal counsel. So what's considered an open and public meeting? It's when a public body quorum, also known as a simple majority, meets to discuss or act upon government business. It includes the meetings sometimes referred to as workshops or executive sessions. Regular meetings, public hearings, electronic meetings, and emergency meetings are all open and public meetings. Open and public meetings don't include chance or social meetings. A public hearing is a type of open and public meeting where citizens have a reasonable opportunity to speak. Public hearings happen when a government adopts a budget, imposes or increases taxes or fees, or transfers money from an enterprise fund. These meetings have extra notice and posting requirements and won't be addressed in this video. An electronic meeting is a type of open and public meeting that's convened electronically, such as via phone or the internet. Remember, the governing body must adopt a resolution, rule, or ordinance allowing and governing electronic meetings. OPMA adds additional requirements too. An emergency meeting may be held to discuss an urgent matter due to unforeseen circumstances. In order to hold the meeting, the best notice that's feasible is provided of the time, location, and topics to be considered. An attempt is made to contact all governing body members, and a governing body majority approves the meeting. An open and public meeting may be closed to discuss any of the following: a person's character, competence, or health, collective bargaining, litigation, certain real property transactions, including any form of a water right or water shares, with specific restrictions, security personnel, devices, or systems deployment, investigations of criminal misconduct, and private or protected information per the Utah Procurement Code, including trade secrets. A closed meeting may be held only if a quorum is present and the meeting was properly noticed. 2/3 of the governing body present at the meeting need to vote yes to close a meeting. Quick math lesson. 2 divided by 3 equals 66.7%. Let's say your governing body has 5 members present at the meeting. If 3 out of 5 members vote yes, that equals 60%. Which is not equal or greater than 66.7%, which means you're 1 member short and would need 4 out of 5 members to vote yes. During a closed meeting, a governing body can't interview someone applying to fill an elected position, discuss filling a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, discuss the character, competence, or health of a person whose name was submitted for consideration to fill a midterm vacancy or temporary absence, approve any ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation, contract, or appointment, or take a vote, unless it's a vote on a motion to end the closed portion of the meeting and return to an open meeting. When a governing body closes a meeting, the following must be publicly announced and entered into the minutes of the open meeting at which the closed meeting was approved: the reason or reasons for holding the closed meeting, the location where the closed meeting will be held, and the vote of each member of the governing body either for or against the motion to close the meeting. If a closed meeting is discussing a person's character, competence, or health, or security personnel, devices, or systems deployment, or several other exceptions, mostly related to state bodies or project entities, no recording or minutes are required. However, the presiding member needs to sign a sworn written statement stating such. If the closed meeting is held for any other reason, a recording must be made, which includes date, time, and place of the meeting, names of members present and absent, and names of all others, except where disclosure would infringe on the confidentiality necessary to fulfill the original purpose of closing the meeting. Regular open and public meetings require 24 hours notice. The public notice includes the meeting agenda, date, time, and place. Public meeting agendas need to include reasonably specified topics to be considered, with each topic listed under a separate agenda item on the meeting agenda. The governing body may not consider a topic in an open meeting that wasn't on the agenda. If a new topic not on the agenda is raised by the public during an open meeting, the governing body may discuss the topic. However, final action may not be taken on the new topic during that meeting. Additionally, entities holding regular meetings scheduled in advance over the course of the year need to provide annual notice of the entire year's meeting schedule. The notice must include date, time, and place for each meeting.
Notice is posted on the public body's website, in a public location such as the location where the meeting will be held, and on Utah's public notice website in accordance with Utah Code 63G-30-102.
Typically, posting on the public notice website is done by the records officer, recorder, or clerk. However, it's the governing body's responsibility to ensure notice is provided. State Archives has prepared a training manual and quick guide for owners and posters, as well as training videos that can be accessed at their website, archives.utah.gov. Written minutes and a recording are kept of all open meetings, with few exceptions. Written minutes include the date, time, and place of the meeting, the names of members present and absent, the substance of all matters, names of citizens providing comments, the substance of the comments provided, any information a body member requests be entered into the minutes or recording, and a record by individual member of each vote taken. A body with elected members must record each vote in list format by category for each action taken by a member, including yes votes, no votes, and absent members next to each member's name. A recording must be a complete and unedited record of all open portions of the meeting from beginning to end, and be labeled with the meeting date, time, and place. All or any part of an open meeting may be independently recorded by any person in attendance if the recording does not interfere with the conduct of the meeting. Pending minutes means written minutes of an open meeting in draft form subject to change before being approved by the public body that held the open meeting. Pending minutes must contain a clear indication, such as a draft or pending watermark, that the governing body hasn't yet approved the minutes and that the minutes are subject to change until the public body approves them. Approved minutes means written minutes of an open meeting approved by the public body that held the open meeting. Entities must establish and implement procedures for the public body's approval of written minutes. Public meeting pending minutes, approved minutes, and recordings are public records under GRAMA. Any individual who publicly presents information relating to an item on the public body's meeting agenda must provide a copy of the information for inclusion in the public record. Make pending minutes available to the public within 30 days. Within 3 business days after approving written minutes of an open meeting, make approved minutes and any public materials available at the Utah Public Notice website, the entity's primary office, and the entity's website. Within 3 business days after holding an open meeting, make an audio recording of the open meeting available to the public for listening.
All right. So we are all hereby trained. All right, we're a little short on time, so we're going to jump to the last few things pretty quickly. Let's see, there's a number of recordings and productions available for you. Please go take a look at those. There's a lot of great work that the team puts into those productions, so please go peruse through those materials. Jumping down, see, our next meeting will be on Valentine's Day, it looks like, February 14th. So everyone, please make sure you have that on your calendar. And then looking ahead, the next one after that will be the 11th of April. Then we'll have June 13th. So please make sure you block off some time for those meetings. And then let's see. I think then, just as we just heard, we'll have recording and minutes from this meeting that should be published here in the next few days. So a link for that recording will be available and posted as soon as it's created. So we'll have that ready for you. Are there any walk-in items folks may have?
Again, if we could get that presentation, that the first part of the meeting, that would be great.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. All right. If there's not anything else, then call for adjournment.
So moved.
All right. I think we just need one. So meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Happy holidays.
You
Thanks for
guys
your time
too.
today.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks, Rick.